am Robin Thompson, and I am a fundraising consultant, and I help nonprofits raise more money. And this is number 6 of these that I've done. About 6 weeks ago, I just said, I want to do something. I want to do something to help the nonprofits, because there's so many of us out there that I just felt like that there was just this dread of what's the future hold. And I wanted to do something to give hope. And so I started these, and I have had some fabulous guests to interview. And I am very excited about our guest this morning. We are so fortunate to have Laura Stack here with us. And I'll tell you what, I don't know if you all are experiencing this. I've heard it from a few of you that it seems like I should have more hours in my day because I'm not dressing up and going out and meeting people. But I get to the end of the day and I look at my list and I haven't checked anything off of it. So we have an expert this morning to talk about how can we be more productive. And so her moniker is the Productivity Pro. She's an award-winning keynote speaker, best-selling author, and noted authority on employee and team productivity. Recently, she started a new nonprofit, which she's going to tell us about, called Johnny's Ambassadors, and understands what we as nonprofits are challenged with each day. For nearly 30 years, Laura has helped leaders increase workplace performance in high-stress environments. She's the best-selling author of 8 books and a past president of the National Speakers Association. So Laura, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Robin. I'm thrilled to be here. So what? You said these people are struggling with managing time. They're all here. We're early. They're on time. I don't know what the problem is.
That's right. So Laura, I know I had said this to you about, I don't have as many face-to-face meetings. I'm meeting people on Zoom, but yet I still don't have the time. And you said to me, I can't manufacture more time for you. I'm like, daggone it. So
that was funny.
What are your suggestions for us that we can be more productive at home, and then take that, as some of areas are opening back up now, take it back into the workplaces?
Yes, if I could figure out a way to manufacture more hours in the day, I would be a very wealthy woman, that's for sure. I think having this COVID situation has been to many people a gift, in that it helps us see right through what we used to say about, I'll get that done when I have more time. A lot of people are saying, well, I had more time and that is still not done. And so I think it gives us kind of a false sense of having too much time when we are at home. We're not commuting, we're not driving. The routine, in a sense, has evaporated. And I think that is actually part of the problem. I still recommend having a structured routine, because it's easy to get lulled into this false sense of security of, oh, I have all day, right? Because it just doesn't feel like it has the same constraints on it. So a 1-hour call, normally if we were pretty rigid about that, now we're like, yeah, it's, we kind of have this lackadaisical feeling, and that 1-hour call becomes a 90-minute call because, oh, I have so much time on my hands. So I think it's kind of easy for time to seep away without us even realizing it. I still like to maintain my same routine. Now, I've worked from home for 30 years. So for me, it wasn't that much of a change, but it's hard for many people to actually feel productive if you're lolling around in your robe till noon, right? It just doesn't give you that same sharpness and get up and go. And so I think that our laziness has actually slid into a bit of our day and kind of expanded this put your feet up on the desk and relax almost sense. So some of that urgency is gone. Does that make sense to you?
It does make sense. And so that routine, so of course the routine is going to be different than when we went to the office. Right. So that routine, would you say that we get up and, go ahead and get dressed and put our makeup on and do all of that?
If that was part, now, if you want to wear yoga pants, fine. I'm just saying, don't wear your pajamas, right? And your robe, and it's noon and you haven't even brushed your teeth. I mean, there's just, there's a lot of a lackadaisical approach to our day. And so it's easy where if you're not organized, you're not up, you don't feel sharp, you don't feel productive. You could spend the first part of that day, I'm just going to do a little reading. I'm just going to check out the news. Oh, I think I'll read my social media, and it's 10 o'clock and you're like, what have I gotten done? I haven't had anything done. So I think there's a sense that some of that personal life kind of moves into our workday easily when we're at home. If you had an office to go to, and because I've never had an office, I've always been very good about, now I'm not rigid, but if my mother calls, I say, do you need me right now, or can I call you at 6? If a neighbor comes over, just wants to social distance, I'm like, hey, let me I'll come and knock on your door at 5 when I'm done working for the day. It's almost like, oh, well, you're home. Oh, so there's this feeling of play. So, I think I'll go throw in a load of laundry. I mean, there's so much that if you're procrastinating on, working on that fundraiser for next week, that suddenly there's all kinds of things that you can think of that you need to do. And you find yourself standing in front of the refrigerator, right? Instead of really staying focused. So I just think it makes the day a little more random.
And so you just walked through my head when you say, you look at the clock and it's 10 o'clock and you're like, what did I get done?
Nothing. I've wasted the most important hours of the day. I mean, most people wake up and they are, energetic morning people. A lot of people have great energy in the morning. That is the perfect time to work on activities that require creativity or decision-making. If you're trying to solve problems, if you're working on marketing campaigns, you got to do this when your brain is sharp, when you're on. A lot of people go, oh, I got all day, and it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. They're like, I think I should work on that campaign now. And they just don't have the alertness and the mental sharpness. So whenever you have your mental acuity, if it's in the morning, don't do anything until you've sat down and worked on some of that. And then maybe check your social media or whatever your guilty pleasures are. But I like to see some accomplishment early on so that we're not just wasting those first few hours of the day.
Yeah, I love it. That's perfect advice for me at least. And I'm sure some of the people that are on the phone will say that too.
Mm-hmm.
Because one of the things I decided to do the other day, because I have gotten so frustrated with time, and I love your word, evaporating, that I started keeping a time schedule. Okay, so, I created the schedule. Okay, from, 8 to 9, I'll do this. From 9 to 10, I'll do this. And then the phone call comes in, the email comes in, and all of a sudden that schedule goes out the window. And so that didn't work. And so I said, well, I'll just keep track of my time. So every time I start at something, I'll write down what time it is and how long it takes me. And I mean, I think that lasted an hour and a half. So that blew up. So it's like, oh, come on. Like, what would you suggest?
Well, I don't think either of I admire your tenacity in attempting to get on top of it and, hey, try all kinds of things. I don't think either of those techniques necessarily will work. They're a little flawed simply because if you try to plan out your day like that, I'll do this from 8 to 9, 9 to 10, whatever you said. Within the first 5 minutes, the whole thing is going to blow up because our members, our donors, our requests, things don't come in neatly and within time frames. I mean, you're going to end up having something unexpected that reprioritizes your time fairly instantly. So trying to plan tightly like that, I think the whole thing would probably blow up in 5 minutes, Rob. Did that happen?
Oh, yeah. That's
Yeah.
exactly right.
Yeah. And then logging your time, I've never been a real big fan of that. I think as a diagnostic tool for people who are trying to justify adding another staff person to document, I am working nonstop on critical tasks, and yet, after 10 hours a day of solid work on this with these other things falling through the cracks, I'm yet not able to meet these deadlines. So some people use that as a way when they're trying to demonstrate the need for head count. I've seen that done effectively, I think, but for us, it can almost be more of a waste of time. I think most people know exactly what they're doing to waste time and where it's going. And yes, I think it's good to have some sort of structure in your mind laid out. I like to distinguish between what I call the hard landscape and the soft landscape. So the hard landscape are things that are unchangeable in your day. And so when you look at your calendar, you have meetings, phone calls, Zoom, right? Conference call. You have specific times that you have agreed to talk with someone or to connect. And it's not like you can work on your to-do list while you're doing that. Oh, everybody hang on while I do a little work over here, right? I mean, it's hard. It's not flexible. So, a lot of people like to see on their calendar, I got a meeting from here to here, here to here, here to here. So the time that's in between, I call that the soft landscape. And a lot of times when we approach our day, maybe we have 5 hours of a hard landscape in a day. And you're like, okay, I'm only going to work 8 hours today. So I've only got 3 hours of soft time. And my to-do list has, if I look at it, 17 hours equivalent work. So part of the problem is that we're being completely unrealistic about what we're actually going to be able to get accomplished. That's a problem. Another problem is sometimes we're not organized enough to be able to see the entire list of everything that we need to work on because we've got it disjointed or scattered in too many places. Maybe I've got some stuff in my social media and I've got texts and I've got some voicemails and I got some emails and I wrote this down and here's some sticky notes. And so some people don't even really have their arms around the complete picture of what it is I have to do. And until you have that, you're not even really able to prioritize what needs to happen. If I got 17 hours of stuff and 3 hours of soft landscape, then it becomes a little easier to go, if I don't get this done right here, it isn't going to happen. Or you're going to end up buying yourself a late night, which is what a lot of people end up doing because they don't realize the value of that soft time that you just mentioned from 8 to 10 in the morning, and now it's gone. And now you got to stay up until 8 p.m. working on it because you didn't structure your day correctly. So if you've ever said to yourself, okay, I wish I could have done that day over, I would have a do-over. And so, Robin, I think it's really, really important that the night before, when you leave your office, that already you're mentally on tomorrow, that you've looked at what the hard landscape is, you've looked at the soft landscape, what you actually have available, you've done some planning, you've looked at the universe of everything you need to work on, you've determined loosely kind of, okay, what's really going to fit within there. You've set some realistic expectations of yourself, right? And then the key becomes some pretty heavy discipline within there. When you kind of know, oh, this is going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy. If I don't do this task at 11 o'clock, the day is blown. It is just not going to happen unless I do it at 9 p.m. And so that's where a lot of people end up having seep into their personal lives because of that lack of structure, forethought, planning, prioritization. So what I'd say to you, Robin, is if you have to, to put a block on your calendar instead of trying to schedule the entire day. Put a 1 hour block where you know it's a soft landscape and turn it into a hard landscape for yourself.
Wow.
And then
that's like putting time on the calendar for you, for your important things.
Yeah. And then you have to treat it just as important as I'm getting on a call with Robin, right? Because it's so easy to go, I think I'll go make a sandwich, right? I mean, we have to be like, okay, 10 o'clock, boom, I'm working on this activity. And so I think a few early wins like that. And then, you've got to make sure you're not being distracted during that time. I mean, we can talk about that, but there's a lot of things that throw people off. But even just do a couple 45-minute hard landscape with yourself. It doesn't matter, until you can feel like, okay, I made some real progress. I think it's more designing the day, Robin, than having a default day. Don't just kind of let things happen. There has to be some purposeful thought, some design to the day. So when it starts, bam, you can attack it because you've already thought about it. And the time to do that is not in the morning, that's for sure.
Right, because I'm wasting time in the morning, right? Because I'm wasting that critical time if I'm planning my day, as opposed to already have it planned and get in there and just get going. That's great advice.
And especially if you've got a heavy day of meetings, a lot of times we'll end up working a 14-hour day, 14-hour day, people tell me, because they have so many meetings. Well, maybe you need to reduce the hard landscape. There is nothing wrong when you look at your to-do list. If you've got more soft landscape, important things, and you need more time, sometimes getting in touch with people where it's a lower priority and saying, do you mind if we move this, another day, 2 days? Most of the time, I mean, unless it's your best donor, I'm learning all about this nonprofit biz, and we don't really have any donors yet. We're working on it. But if you can shift something from hard landscape to soft landscape, if it's really critical, then sometimes that will help. Sometimes I've got things on my schedule where it was like, I want to connect with a girlfriend, and we're like, hey, let's talk at 4 o'clock, and I'll just say, can we move that to 7, because I really do need to keep working on this, so it just depends on who it is and what the context is.
Yeah.
We got a question here from
Cookie.
She says, my only child is fully grown. I've got a couple of those, but many of my friends and colleagues have from 1 to 3 kids at home all the time now. Yes, the kids have school online. Yeah, I have we have 3 kids. Johnny's Ambassadors is after my 19 forever son, who died by suicide in November of last year, November 20, 2019. So I have 3 and 2 living. I have one who is 24, and she is independent and on her own. But I have an 18-year-old, James, who is a freshman at CSU, and he is home and he is online. And even he, mom, he's a young man, right? And it's still a very different level of distraction to have children in the house when you're used to them being away at school. But I tell you what, even when James and Johnny were 5 and 6 years old, they're 16 months apart, they knew that, and I could show it to you, but I have a tape, like when you go to the airport and they're cleaning the restrooms and you go zip and you pull it across. They knew that if that tape was up, they were not to come through it. Even 5-year-olds can read that signal. So I think it's very important that we have family meetings, that we sit down, that we manage expectations, that we state our needs, that we set up a very firm schedule around when they're going to be needing help, and then when mom and dad need to be working. And so that's something that you've got to plan for But you're right, it is a little more chaotic without that routine. So I would have more routine if I had 3 of them here instead of just one.
Right. And I was talking with a client yesterday, and her little 3-year-old, walked across naked across the front.
Oh,
She's
nice.
like, "Oh, you didn't need to see that."
And people understand, they really do. But, if you're trying to be professional and your 3-year-old naked kid comes across, if you have someone to tag team with, my husband is here and he has our dog and our cat who would both be in here talking with you. So it does help if you have another person.
Yeah, because I hear that a lot, Cookie, that people are challenged now with their kids, and one of my clients, her little girl sits on her lap and plays and laughs and cries, but what else can she do? Her husband has to go to work, so
right.
So, Laura, one of the things that you just mentioned was about the new nonprofit that you just started called Johnny's Ambassadors. And now you've got 2 full-time businesses, you've got a family, and I was so impressed at breakneck speed. You got everything established, you got your board in place. I mean, I could not believe how quickly all of that happened. And so, what was the secret? I mean, how did you do that?
I'm a serial entrepreneur. So, I have an MBA. So part of it is that my brain works that way. I didn't really look at a nonprofit much differently than my for-profit, my other 2 businesses. You just have to translate a little of the language. Donations instead of revenues, donors instead of clients, executive director, that type of thing. But the processes really were all the same, registrations and having bylaws and a lot, the IRS form. Now that was a little bit more hairy, but I think making sure that you understand what the priorities are of each. And now you've got to look at all of it from a macro view and deadlines and making sure, because now I'm literally working on 3 businesses at one time during the day. And I use kind of a triage model. My father is a former colonel. I grew up on the Air Force Academy, and he always used to say, "Sweetheart, they don't treat the soldiers in the order that they come off the battlefield." And that was kind of our running joke, because I'd be standing there wanting my dad to pay attention to me right now. I'm the most important thing, right, Daddy? But there could be something else that was a higher priority. And my dad taught me at a very young age that you don't always get immediate gratification, that sometimes you have to wait, that it's not your turn, or your need is not the most important. Not that I don't love you, sweetie, but we don't treat the soldiers in the order they come off the battlefield. And I think that was a really good lesson for me to learn. So in your day, when stuff shows up, many people just respond to it. And it's difficult and I'm not saying they're not important. I'm just saying they're not important right now. So if I get a text, and I rarely have my notifications on, if you get a text, you don't have to look at it. If you get an email, you don't have to check it. It's almost like outside stimuli has kind of trained us on, hey, I'm standing here, I'm next, right? Try doing that in an emergency room, right? With everything going on. You walk in and you burned your finger, and then someone else comes in that's having a hard time breathing or has stroke symptoms. And you're like, excuse me, I was here first. Nobody cares, right? And so that's really how you have to think about. It's not that you don't care about the person. You have to learn to say yes to the person, but no to the interruption. I am focused on finishing up this grant proposal that is due, at noon today. Can I call you at 2:00? Not just because it showed up doesn't mean you have to handle it. So we've got to be really careful about what we allow to take our time. I've just really figured out that if you let them, other people are really good at figuring out your day for you. And, being able to manage the expectations, being able to get the right priorities, work on the right things in order of triage. And it sounds kind of crass, but sometimes I ask myself the question, okay, who's going to die first? Not necessarily the person, but the task. If you treat it like a patient, what's going to die first? Right? Because sometimes we work on things that are not important at all because we just go, oh, I've been so busy. I deserve this little mental break. I'm going to go over here and work on this. And then at the end of the day, you just have this nagging sense of dissatisfaction because you're like, I still didn't get that done. So we feel like we're busy. We feel like our time is filled with things, but I really like to work on that thing that when I get that checked off my list, that is going to have an amazing impact on my business, on profitability, on revenues, on, donor value, whatever it is that your metrics are that you're focused on, rather than just responding to this, responding to that, there's just so much. So I think it's a lot of purposeful planning.
Yeah, and that's interesting because I ask fundraisers and I say to them, so, is what you have right now on your schedule, is that something that's going to help you raise money for your organization? And if it's not, then maybe that needs to go further down your list, because for many people, that is one of the key pieces that keeps that nonprofit going, is the money coming in the door as donations. And again, we're in a different time now with the coronavirus. And I say, ask yourself the question, is this help building the relationship with my donor? It might not be raising money right now, but is it helping build that relationship?
Yes, I call that the PROI of an activity. Everyone talks about ROI in business, and I talk about PROI. What is my personal return on my investment of time in doing this activity? So if I spend my time invested on this activity, what is the result, the outcome going to be if it returns to me? So if you're looking at productivity, achieving maximum results in minimum time, you're actually looking at what is that ratio. And so if you're doing an activity like connecting with a donor that may someday give you a significant contribution, then you may say that activity had a high personal return on my investment of time in doing it. The challenge is many of us are very, we are the leaders of our organizations, and so we end up doing a lot of things that do not have a high PROI, personal return. It doesn't mean that it's not an important thing or that someone should be doing it. Now, I have 2 other companies, so I have, other people who are my office manager. My husband is our chief operations officer. Of course, his salary is exactly 0 for Johnny's nonprofit, for Johnny's ambassadors, but you have to have other people. And I don't know how far along everybody is in their nonprofits. If they have paid staff, we don't yet. But if you look at the equivalent in a for-profit, so if I take one of my companies, the Productivity Pro, because that's my, my main expertise that we're talking about here, my office manager, Nadine, I have to think about what my PRI is versus hers. So we have a newsletter that we put out every week, and I blog and we send it out as a newsletter. And so it makes sense for me to write the article because I'm the one who has the expertise in productivity. It makes sense from getting the word out about the Productivity Pro for us to write a newsletter, right? So this is a very high use of my time to write an article each week. But should I be the one to load it up into MailChimp and test the links and maybe, edit it? Should I pay for the blast? No, because I'm the executive director. And so that is, and you've heard the term, beneath my pay grade. And it's not saying that's not my job, or, oh, just let me do that real quick because I'm good at it and I can do it. I mean, right, we have a lot of excuses that we use. It'll take me just as long to explain to someone else how to do it, so we end up just doing a lot of things ourselves where we shouldn't be because it does not have a high PROI. So I think that's another one of my secrets, Robin, is that I have a lot of help. Now, with Johnny's Ambassadors, I'm pretty bold. I just went to people and asked them to help me pro bono. I asked an attorney to help. I asked a webmaster. I have a writer. I got a graphics person. I got an accountant. I mean, I just asked. And people and these are people who love me, these are people who agree, who know our mission, who know what happened to Johnny, and they want to help. And people always say, oh, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. And I'm like, hey, I know. I got some ideas on how you can help. So I think you do have to look at, could I learn Canva and go in and design an email, campaign? Sure. I'm intelligent. I can learn. I can do that. But just because I can do it doesn't mean that I should. I need to let my graphic artist do that because I already have someone who agreed to help.
Right. And I think that's great advice because I know a lot of the people who are on the call right now try to do everything themselves because they know it's going to cost them to pay somebody to do it. But yet, if we can find some people like you did with Johnny's Ambassadors that are willing to do it pro bono, and so
or for very expensive. Yeah, I mean, if you can get someone to do something for $20 and the value of your time having that, working on a grant, talking with a donor, working on a new campaign, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars an hour with the ROI factor, then you realize very quickly, wow, that isn't something that I should.
Exactly. And you mentioned email, and I know for me, that's a big time waster. You had mentioned not having the notification where it dings when emails come in. And, what other advice would you give for email?
Oh, that is, I'm doing a 5-hour series right now on Microsoft Outlook with email. So it's hard to respond to you in just a couple of minutes. But I would say in general, people don't know how to use all of the built-in functionality of most of their email programs. So many people don't know that email also comes with a to-do list. And so they're doing things like putting things to do on their calendar. So if you put something to do on your calendar and you don't get to it, what do you have to do? You have to move it. You have to change it. You have to manually edit something if you use your calendar as a to-do list. So time moves backward. So if you don't change the calendar item, you lose it, right? So people are trying to use their calendars to keep track of their to-dos, which is not what it was intended to do. Other people are trying to use their inboxes as to-do lists. So if they get an email and they can't handle it, they can't delete it, they can't forward it, they don't want to file it, but it's something that they need to do, but they don't want to do it right then because they don't have the time, or maybe it's not due. Many people just leave it in their inbox, right? Or they keep it as new, or they put a flag on it. And so the majority of people have no idea how to turn an email into a task. Because in Outlook, for example, tasks are not even enabled. You have to turn on several different features to even view your tasks. And if you're doing flags on your email, those are not tasks. Those are to-dos, and you're simply putting a reminder on an email. So there's a button in Outlook, and this works in Gmail too. Gmail has a to-do list. Many people didn't even know that you can right-click on an email in Gmail, and there's a copy to do, or if you click on more, there's a to-do list that's part of Gmail. In Outlook, you click the button that says move, and then you click tasks, and then you put a start date and a due date, and it takes that email and moves it over to your task list, so that when you open it, you work on the email from tasks. So it keeps your inbox empty, but if you've never played with this function before, then it's not something that you would know about. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges that people have with email, is that they don't actually know all of the tips, the techniques, the functionality of email. If anybody's interested in that Outlook course, we can connect about that. It's a 5-hour with homework and screenshots and step-by-step instructions. So if that is something that you're really having a challenge with, we can talk more about that.
Talking a little bit about Johnny's Ambassadors, and just tell us a little bit about how that started, and you know, your what's happening with Johnny's Ambassadors.
Okay, sure. Thanks for that invitation. No, when Johnny died by suicide in November, he had been doing a lot of high THC, 90% potency, marijuana wax extracts, which are not the same as grass. It's with a butane or hash propane run through the grass to extract the pure THC. And they make that, the chemists make that into a very pure form of THC that looks like a beeswax. There's no plant in it anymore. It's not natural. It's just the chemicals, which is the thing that causes psychosis in the marijuana. So he, from a very young age, was dabbing. This is called dabbing. The verb is dab, not the dance, but to do a dab is a concentrate. And it, over time, causes psychotic effects and changes in a child the way their brain is developing. And so sadly, when Johnny was doing this, Colorado legalized marijuana in 2014. And so by the time he was 19 years old, he developed schizophrenia from smoking too much, or inhaling too much of this high THC wax. So we started a nonprofit where our mission is to educate parents and teens about this high THC wax that is coming. A lot of people have never even seen it. They don't know what the difference is, or parents think, you know, I did pot when I was a kid. What's the big deal? You know, back then when you smoked a joint, it would be 2-5% THC content. You have to smoke 15 joints to get the effect of one hit off a dab. So we're talking very toxic, very potent form of that. So we are starting a nonprofit in the hope of starting an educational video series to bring to high schoolers with the goal of showing some recovered addicts that are teens and peers, basically saying, this is real. You know, this happened to us, so that during access time, while the teens are watching these videos, we can bring this education to them. So that's what our mission is, Robin.
Wow. And so, yeah, I mean, it's very sad, but, you know, typical, I know you so well because we've known each other for many, many years. Yes. And instead of you just saying, oh, you know, I'm a grieving mother, you're saying, you know what? I don't want anybody else to have to go through what I have been through. That's and right. So in true Laura Stack fashion, You said, I'm going to start a nonprofit and I'm going to help educate.
That's right.
And one of the things that you had mentioned to me was that you had an incredible offer, and that's what I mentioned in the email I sent out to people, that you could help the Johnny's ambassadors, but also help the people on the call.
Oh yes, if anybody on this call is interested in that Outlook series, or I'm running another 8-week productivity series called Accelerate. That starts on May the 6th, and it's 6 Wednesdays it's 10. 10 Wednesdays for 1 hour. If anybody wants to participate in that, just to donate, any donation to Johnny's Ambassadors, and I would enroll them in that for free.
Wow.
So I can put the links, you know what? I'll put the links on here to that so they can see. One is Accelerate and one is Cracker Jack. That's the Outlook.
And Laura, I've started working through one of those programs, and for those of you that are listening, the Outlook piece has just been fabulous. I mean, it's just like one little nugget that Laura tells me. It's like, oh yeah, why didn't I think of that?
Well, because you wouldn't know. You actually have to. Oh, I didn't even know you could do that. I mean, for most people, it's just, I wish I would have known that 10 years ago. You know, it's like really eye-opening. But I put the two series, the Outlook series and the Accelerate series, and I put my email up and the donate link. And if anybody feels that they've received value from this and they want to donate, I will sign you up for one of those series. Just let me know.
Wow. Thank you.
How can I get a hold of you? That's my story. Oh, I'm sorry. That's my email address there.
Okay.
I would love to talk with you about what you're struggling with. We cannot lose any more young people who don't understand what this is. And sadly, a lot of parents, I did a Facebook post. You can follow me on Facebook too. And I got 20,000 shares on a posting, and it was mostly people saying, I don't even know what you're talking about. I don't even know what this is. So it isn't your mama's pot. It is a new thing that's out. It's a new designer marijuana, and we've got to be really aware of it. Thank you for asking, Robin. I appreciate. And we're talking about productivity, but now we're talking about Johnny's Ambassadors. But thank you.
Well, but I think one of the things, though, Laura, as you know, all of us are sitting here on this call, and we're saying, okay, well, life's tough. I've got kids running through the house, or I've got, a husband or whatever. But then we hear your story and say, even in the midst of the grief, Laura is able to say, okay, this is what needs to be done. How do I get this done? And I mean, it's just, I admire you so much for being able to say, this is what I know needs to be done, regardless of how, the grief that you feel. So thank you for this just wonderful offer. I mean, that's just
my pleasure. Well, and I don't want everybody to think that I'm like, healed, or I mean, today, right now, I'm okay. I'm still, it's only been 5 months, so there's a lot of grief, and I do allow myself to grieve a lot. I still do. It's hard to turn it off at night, and I'll have, I cry throughout the day, and I think that's normal. I feel though that the healing comes from action, from doing things. Whenever we have a loss or we're grieving, that really gives us the ability to focus on something else that just helps us move through it, I think, a little more gracefully. I'm a believer, so I believe that Johnny's in heaven in the Lord's presence, and that he's happy and healed and whole. So, that gives me great comfort. But I think you can also distract yourself when you're in grief unhealthily, right? I mean, you don't want to be so focused on something that you're blocking out the sadness and the grief, and you're not allowing yourself to go through that. So we're in several support groups. We're doing grief share through our local church. I have a therapist. I mean, I know this is going to be a long road for me, but while I'm working on this, it actually does help with the healing. So I would recommend it for anyone to, get involved, do something for others. If you have a loss, it really does help you.
And, some of people are suffering right now from the grief of loss of someone, whether it be from COVID or loss of someone during this time when they can't have a memorial service, and so I think that, that grief is pervasive. I don't remember how many deaths there have been now from COVID, but
well, they're likening it to survivor's guilt.
Exactly.
Because someone got laid off and you didn't, or someone's mother died and yours didn't, or, there's just, I think, a lot of similar. I think we are grieving as a nation, grieving what was, grieving the deaths, grieving our lifestyles. But, what are they saying? It's the new abnormal. Where I used to say I had to find my new normal with Johnny. I think all of us now, that those stages of grief are very much like losing someone, because it is a loss, and it is hard to be productive. And that's where I do think keeping your head down, staying focused, having a schedule, trying to be a little more disciplined, get ready for your day, prepare for your day, get organized. I don't think there is a better time for that than what is happening right now. And if, you spend a little more time each day to kind of get on top of things, so that, okay, when this is all over, I'm going to be ready to hit the ground running. Maybe it is a good time to kind of get your rear in gear and use this as a way to be raring to go as soon as businesses open again and money starts flowing and donors start being in a position to make contributions.
Yeah. And I think that's great advice, because all of us know that everything's different now, and everything's going to be different for a while. Yeah. And so I think that's great advice. So thank you for sharing that story and making that just phenomenal offer for your program. Because again,
my pleasure. Cookie says 59,000 in the U.S. now.
Yeah. So, okay. So we've got just about 7 minutes left. And so any of you all, if you have questions, if you please type them into the chat box, and we'll keep going as your questions come in. But one of the things, Laura, and you kind of touched on it, social media. So, it's like it's the thorn in our side. For those of us in nonprofits, we really need to have a social media presence.
Absolutely.
And, just like we do in a business, but yet, I know that it can just suck us in. And so then, like an hour goes past and you're like, oh no. What tips do you have for us with social media?
Yeah, you absolutely have to have social media. It's a critical marketing component of any business, whether it's for-profit, nonprofit. I'm pretty much out of Facebook requests on my personal profile. So I've got, business pages for Productivity Pro, for my Leadership USA business. I'm making one for Johnny's Ambassadors. We already have 650 Johnny's Ambassadors on a Facebook group. So I'll put that in too, because I'd love for you all to join me there. And you notice how fast I can put stuff up. So that's another trick, is to make sure that you do know how to use your bookmarks, that you can click, you can paste links. I also use a little program called a text replacement utility. It's called shortkeys.com. And so you tell it you're going to send it something by hitting $, and then like L3, that's my email address. L1 is Laura@leadershipusa.com. L2 is Laura@theproductivitypro.com. L4 is Laura@laurastag.com. So anything that you retype over and over, credit card, street address, your anything, letters, thank you. I use short keys, and I type in short keys because I have all the codes remembered. So that's just a little trick. But with social media, I would say, just like I said with email, with your schedule, with your time, that you want to be purposeful doing it. Okay, I'm going into Facebook. I'm going to post this campaign for May 5th, Giving Tuesday, whatever, right? I'm going to check my inbound messages, and then I'm going to get off. See, so what most people start doing is now they're like, and they start scrolling, and what are all my friends doing? And it's okay to do that if you're doing that on purpose. In other words, I'm done for the day. I'm not working. I'm going to take my laptop and go sit in the living room and hang out and watch Magnum PI while I just gave away one of my shows that we watch, I'm going to scroll through Facebook. Fine. Right? Or if you're at lunch or you're taking a break, but don't just do it mindlessly without having a purpose for that time. Maybe have a hit list of in Twitter who you want to follow, right? And going and looking at just those people that are important for your particular nonprofit, retweeting, reposting, and then done, right? If you get on LinkedIn, go in, post in your whatever it is, your article that you're posting, right? Check your messages, check on a few key things. The problem becomes when we're like, oh, this looks like, this is interesting, click. Oh, well, what? Oh, this looks like a click. Oh, what, right? And that's, Robin, I think that's probably what you're doing.
I confess.
Well, my mom is a psychiatrist, and she calls that OSS. She calls that, ooh, shiny syndrome. So she says people go, so you have to not have OSS, Robin. You can't go after the shiny thing.
Well, thanks, Laura.
That's important. Get in there, get your business done, get off.
Okay, I like that advice. Okay, we have a question from Chris, and then there's one other thing I want to do to wrap it up.
Okay.
So Chris asked, do you have any best practices for how to effectively approach time blocking? I try to estimate how long key tasks will take, and I'm always way off and don't allocate enough time.
Well, I think I would say that you're probably not breaking your project down into fine enough pieces. So don't just say, I'm going to work on the campaign. Okay, so first outline what are the elements of everything that needs to be done in that. And then I would suggest only blocking out an hour, maybe 90 minutes. Most of us, our brains cannot handle more than that. It starts like, and we lose focus. Even 45 minutes is fine. Once I have my task list in Outlook, well, you can just click and drag that onto your calendar and block out a time to work on a task once you've got it set up correctly. And so then treating that appointment like it is a meeting, getting on, working for an hour, and then you're done. So I wouldn't worry so much about estimating and how long is it going to take, but be more careful about breaking it up into pieces and then working on a concrete step of that within a certain block that you've allocated on your calendar.
Great. That's great advice, Laura. Well, I'm going to ask you one more question. And if you could wave your magic wand, and everybody that's on the call today, what might you tell nonprofits? What might you want the magic that you could bestow upon them?
Well, I mean, for me, it would be the gift of productivity. And that's, bing, give you all that, because what you're doing is figuring out how can I get the maximum results, value for my nonprofit, but do it in the minimum amount of time, because the whole goal is to get out of the office on time and be with your loved ones. I mean, that's why we care about productivity, about time management, about being efficient. If you're working 60 hours a week now and you can save an hour a day, now you're 55 hours, that's better, right? So the whole win of being more productive is your life, is your friends, is your loved ones, your hobbies. So I would wish everybody the gift of productivity.
Wow. Well, thank you, Laura. This has been so informative. I mean, I could just go on for a lot longer. I know you've got another webinar that you're facilitating, but you have just given us just so much advice that's just gold. And I can't wait to get off of here, but wait, my morning's already gone. So now I'm kidding.
was a good investment of time. Long-term results.
Yeah, and the people that didn't show up this morning, it's because they didn't have time.
They didn't have time for the time management seminar, right? Well,
Exactly.
hopefully they can watch the recording.
Exactly. Well, Laura, thank you very much. And the program that she's offering for just a small donation, it would just, I think it would change your life, literally change your life. So thank you, Laura.
My pleasure. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.